A few days before the South Carolina primary, Joe Biden lashed out at Bernie Sanders during an event in the town of Conway. The former vice president brought up reports that Sanders considered a primary challenge to President Obama in 2012, saying, quote, "I fundamentally disagree with that," and adding that it is one of the reasons he resents Bernie.
Friend of the show and Fox News politics reporter Paul Steinhauser was at that rally, and he Skypes with us live from South Carolina to tell us more from the middle of a lovely parking lot there.
Yeah.
I love the background. All right, tell us about the rally, what was said, and what was the energy like in the room?
There was actually a lot of energy because this was strange for Vice President Joe Biden. There was an overflow crowd, and there were a lot of people there. You don't see that all the time. There probably were close to 1,000 at this Coastal Carolina event, and there was an overflow crowd that the vice president was touting that he had to go talk to before he came into the main room, the main gymnasium. So, you know, a little taste of, I guess, a Pete Buttigieg or more a Bernie Sanders for Joe Biden. There was a decent amount of energy in the room. This is South Carolina. This is Joe Biden's firewall state. The polls here indicate he's going to win. Some indicate he's going to win by double digits. Some show a much closer margin between him and Senator Bernie Sanders. And as you mentioned, yeah, he was taking some shots at Sanders, again going after Sanders for the reports that Sanders was considering a primary challenge against President Barack Obama back in 2012. He also was hammering the frontrunner in the race, which of course is now Bernie Sanders, hammering over Sanders' past votes on guns and on protecting the NRA, which Sanders has definitely reversed his position with over the years.
So, Paul, you have tracked Biden events now through all the early primary states. You saw the lack of energy on the ground and told us about it here really before a lot of people started paying attention. Is it just a true market difference in South Carolina? Like you can see it with your own eyes, just how much more support he has on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very different state, even than Nevada, where we just were. This state has about, in the Democratic presidential primary electorate, we're talking about 60% African Americans. And the former vice president's always had a strong support among black voters, and that's what he's hoping for here. You're seeing larger crowds. You're seeing slightly more energy. But again, this is a must-win state for Joe Biden. Looks like he's going to get that win. The question, of course, is going to be by how much, because he doesn't have a lot of time to turn things around. He's way behind when it comes to Super Tuesday, which is just 3 days after tomorrow's primary here. He's just getting into the game. He hasn't really visited any Super Tuesday states yet. He's been campaigning almost exclusively here in South Carolina, and he's just now going up with ad buys in the Super Tuesday states. And I'm reporting this morning that his super PAC, Unite the Country, is now going up with a 7-figure buy. But again, that may sound good, way behind everybody else. And remember, Mike Bloomberg is now going to be on the ballot come Super Tuesday, and he spent almost $200 million to put up ads in those 14 states.
Yeah.
It's just insane. Talk to us about Biden's organization on the ground. You know, the other states that seem to be quite lackluster. We got a lot of reports out of Iowa where they really did make a play, you know, especially in the final days to try to pull up his score. They didn't have precinct captains. They were disorganized. They just didn't have their act together on the ground there. And actually, some people were demoted because of how poorly they performed in the state. Do you see that they've invested a lot of resources and infrastructure there on the ground?
Yeah, it started in Nevada where he had that second place finish. Distant second, but he needed it. He'll take a second place finish. Here in South Carolina, yeah, this is really, it's been all about South Carolina for Joe Biden the last week, and it shows. While a lot of the other candidates are campaigning elsewhere in other states and kind of just popping into South Carolina, it's been 100% South Carolina for Joe Biden. His staff on the ground, pretty well organized here. And again, this is his firewall state, and he needs to win it, and that's what he's counting on.
And I mean, this is the thing, though, Paul, is even though he needs to win it, realistically, what kind of bump can we expect here? Because we saw reports that he's only got a 6-figure ad buy. They were bragging about it, but that's actually not that much money across 14 states all across the country when you're competing a 6-figure ad buy with a 10-figure ad buy from Michael Bloomberg. It's not really going to cut it there when he's going into those states.
That's a great question, and I asked one of his top advisors last night at that rally in Conway, and they said what they're counting on is a big win in South Carolina and then a lot of free earned media, right? A lot of free media that they're going to get from that win on Saturday, on Sunday, on Monday, and leading into Tuesday. Because as you pointed out, the vice president, the former vice president's ad buys are minuscule compared not only just to Bloomberg or Steyers, but also to Bernie Sanders, who's put in about, tens of millions of dollars for ads across those 14 states. and that just doesn't cut it. So he's hoping for some good bounce out of South Carolina, a lot of attention for his win. We'll see if it works.
Yeah. Have you talked to any Steyers supporters there? Do you have a sense of how solid his support is and how you expect him to perform this weekend? He's the other person who really bet it all on South Carolina, honestly, and it didn't show up for him in Nevada, where he also invested a whole lot of resources.
No, that's a great point, Crystal. I haven't yet, unfortunately. I'm going to be teaming up with Tom Steyer and some of his supporters a little later today. But, yeah, you mentioned he invested a lot of money in Nevada, a lot of time and a lot of money, did not pay off. I asked the state party chair here, Trav Robertson, whether he thinks that Steyer can translate the investment he put here into solid results. He thinks he can. So we'll see if the state party chair is correct.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. All right, Paul, thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, guys.
Coming up on Rising, host of the podcast The War Room, Jason Miller. He's got some contrapoints on the coronavirus story. That's when Rising continues.